Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with you today. Day two recap of free agency. As you know, last night I said to you there could possibly be a couple of more signings last night that would come after that podcast. There were, and some developments today. We're going to talk about all of that. We're also going to talk about, I've gotten several people who've emailed me that seem to be a little frustrated when it comes to Pete Carroll and some comments he made. We're going to bring clarification to that. And let's just dig right in. So last night after the podcast, the Raiders went out and they got a cornerback, Lonnie Johnson, who's going to be a depth guy, be a guy that will play, a guy that'll be a depth guy. I don't expect him to come in and rock the world, but he's going to be an absolute depth guy. But a guy that I think could be a definite solution is Elandon Robertson, the linebacker out of Pittsburgh. Now, the Raiders gave him a 1-year, $3 million deal. So I don't want to pretend like he's not going to come in and fill all the void of a Robert Spillane, but he's a guy that shows a lot of promise. And I can tell you, if you remember, you can go back and watch the podcast. When the Raiders signed Robert Spillane, I shared with you that people that I know inside the organization were very frustrated with that loss. It came up that the Steelers didn't have the money, and the Raiders just came in and made a massive offer and got him, and the Raiders were thrilled with it. Now we all know, although some choose not to accept reality, that the loss of Spillane was a very big deal. I'm not saying Landon fills that void, but what I am saying is this is a very good football player, and you never have too many very good football players at an exceptional deal. This is a big deal for the Raiders, and I expect him to be a major contributor. All right, let's get to Divine Diablo. He's gone, and he leaves. And I've had a lot of people asking me since the season ended when I talked about free agents, why didn't I discuss Diablo much? I will tell you this, he had a lot of stats. First of all, great kid. And I know that irritates some of my critics when I say it, but I don't care. It's my podcast. Get your own. He is a great kid and he deserves all the credit in the world. And I'm going to be critical of parts of his game. But sometimes we live in a society that if somebody um, gets cut for football reasons, people want to make it personal. And that's just foolish. So he is a wonderful kid, a great kid, hard worker, and he had a lot of stats. That's absolutely true. But he had a lot of stats. How many times did you see him getting guys from the back, catching guys, from the back, or maybe he was out of position, had to run and catch him, use his speed. Had he been able to adapt this year and keep the game more in front of him, you would have saw him re-signing. But there was concerns about that, and I knew it. So there is zero surprise that Divine Diablo is not a Raider anymore. All right. With that being said, I want to talk about something because Pete Carroll made a comment, and wow, have a lot of you asked me to comment on it. I don't know the numbers, but it's been a ton, where he said he wanted to prioritize and re sign his guys. Okay. A lot got away. A lot got away. I know they would have wanted Trayvon Merrick back. They were not going to make that deal. They would have taken Nate Hobbs back, but nowhere near at the amount of money that he got. They would have taken Robert Spillane. They wanted him. Diablo, that was not as much the case. So let me explain, because Pete was absolutely being sincere that they want to prioritize signing their guys. If you didn't watch last night's podcast, I greatly encourage you to go back and do such, because in that podcast, I explained how while the situation right now is not good for the Raiders defensively, their defense took a beating over free agency. It's not John Spytek's fault. I know for a fact that prior to last year, Ziegler's plan was to re-sign Spillane, and I know it was to re-sign Merrick. There were a couple others. I know that I know there was definite interest if Merrick played last year, meaning the year before, like they had expected. I'm talking about 23. And I know there was that they wanted to do it this year. So let's go back. I know that at that there was talk about if Spillane came in really good last year, that was the plan uh, with the Raiders last year. So going into 24, they would have had Max under a new deal, and they would have had Spills under a new deal. Okay, but then Ziegler gets fired. Champ Kelly's there. They're waiting for new minority ownership to come in, kind of helps put the rudder to the organization. And then Telesco's there and he takes over. And it's still, let's wait a little bit, figure out what's going to happen. With Champ Kelly, it was, okay, Champ, we're going to interview you. You're not the guy yet. So he wasn't able to do what Ziegler's plan was, which was to re-sign Max, re-sign Spills. Then Telesco comes in, and I know what his thinking was. He wanted to do the same as well. But situation got out of hand. You're waiting for new minority ownership. Then he loses his job, and Spytek comes in late in the process and behind the eight ball. And I was talking to an NFL executive today who we were talking about the term legal tampering. And all that literally means is the real tampering just starts earlier. So by the time Spytek gets here, guys already knew the market. I mean, you saw when I interviewed Spilly on this show and when I interviewed Adam Butler on the show, we talked about already knowing teams wanted them. Well, if you think that doesn't go on, I'll give you an example. I knew of a team executive that had a relationship with a player that was under contract with another team coming into free agency. So he just sends a letter to this potential free agent. Hey, heard you got a new goldfish. I'm really looking forward to talking to you on. And he gave the date that legal tampering starts about your goldfish, to which he responded, have always wanted one. Well, they knew. And of course, people talk. That is just the nature of the game. It's just like anybody that's ever recovered sports in college recruiting, where coaches aren't allowed to talk about recruits, but they do. It's just all off the record. Same principle. And so Spytek comes in, and guys already realize that the market is going to be big. The Raiders had wanted it to, but a lot of teams were flush with money. And the Raiders want to be investors, not gamblers. Spytek hasn't been around these guys enough. And so he couldn't just come in day one, start handing out contracts, and then it just steamrolled. So what I would say to you is if that concerns you, that's fine. That is Pete Carroll's mindset. It is John Spytek's mindset. And I can tell you it's Tom Brady's mindset, who watched a lot of good people go from New England that he didn't think needed to go. And he's a re-sign our guys who prove it. This year was just a juxtapose. So I look for that to be significantly different next year and in 2 years to be 100% different. Anybody that comes up in their organization they love and they want, they're going to take care of contracts earlier because they're cheaper. You may remember last night, had they done what Ziegler's plan was last year, meaning at the end of 23, excuse me, they would have probably gotten Max for somewhere between 25 and 30, probably closer to 25, but now they end up paying him 35, which is fine because the market's going to go through the roof. They still got a good deal on them. So it's just important to remember that it was Pete Carroll. There isn't a disingenuous bone in his body. In fact, I would disagree with this criticism, but I've been told by people that that's one of his faults is he just He wears everything on his sleeve and sometimes isn't as sly as he needs to be. I disagree, but I can understand why that has hurt him. So that's not anything that he had ignored. Now, what's going moving forward? There are a lot of very important role players left. There are some, and I want to reiterate, some big time players left. And then there are some guys that are going to come up in the trade market. Now, tomorrow, and depending on when you're watching this, the 12th, they'll be able to make Gino's contract official and all the reworking and everything going that will probably happen there. The Raiders will get the exact of where they're going to be, and then I believe that the Raiders, and I know this hearing from people, are still exploring some trades. So I would not eliminate trades. Am I saying any trade is imminent? No, but I told you last night there were some deals that were close. Those happened. And I think there are some trades that they absolutely can pull the trigger on. And they are going to be aggressive. They're going to be aggressive. Now, sometimes fans hear that word aggressive and they get all excited. But aggressive does not mean anything is imminent. Sometimes you can be super aggressive and not find what you want. I remember one time we were looking for a truck for my wife, an SUV. And we were buyers that day. And I don't remember, I think we went to 9 or 10 dealerships and could not find the truck she wanted. She wanted a specific truck. So we were aggressive, but we never pulled the trigger. Same principle. They're going to be aggressive, but it's got to be something that makes sense for the Raiders for a deal to get done. But excuse me, understand there is there's zero sense of panic. I have had a lot of people ask me, where do I think the Raiders defense is right now? Well, if you look at all the guys who are back that were injured, I think they're better. But if you look at where they were last year before all the injuries, I don't think they're as good. But I think there's plenty of time to fix that. There's more free agencies, potential trade, and of course, the draft. And by the way, it's important to remember there are a lot. Remember Trey Taylor? They picked him up the safety last year. And I've already talked to you about Tommy freaking Eichenberg. Okay, DeCamerion, remember him. Don't forget him. DeCam, that corner, he played really good for a rookie coming down the stretch last year. Slide him into the slot where you saw Hobbs. Now, because DeCam played more than Trey Taylor and Tommy Eichenberg, obviously. But the point is, there's those guys, and there's a lot of rookies who played a lot. What about Delmar DJ Glaze, the Mule, and Jackson Powers Johnson, and others? There were a lot of rookies. There was a lot of rookies. That was a tremendous. The Raiders have had 2 super good draft classes, like stacking them like cordwood. There's a lot of young players that are going to get their shots. They're going to get their chance. And they went out and got ball players now. And those gentlemen are going to get their opportunity. And that's all you can ask for in the NFL. I am not a real big Brian Billick fan, but when who uh, won the Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, but he wrote a book, Next Man Up, really good book, a good football book. I'd encourage you to read that book, but that's what this league is about. Next man up. All right. There's no crying. And you know what? I'm happy for Spills. Great guy, and he's a friend. Y'all know that. And I root for good people, and I'm always going to hope Spills does well. I root for Trayvon Merritt. Great kid. Divine Diablo, amazing kid. Nate Hobbs, one of the best. The Raiders lost, some key guys. Some of them hurt more than others. I fully admit. I think Jeremy Chin was a wash with Trayvon, except much cheaper, much cheaper. I understand why Nate went. Just best ability is availability, and it was a struggle. I know why Divine's not here. I get all that. And of course, Spills, the market just got away from the Raiders, and they were not going to overpay. They believe they're going to be able to address it and save that money and do some other things. And hey, if they take the saved money and they go make a trade for somebody that costs a lot of money and they choose more. Now, here's the next thing I want to explain to you. And I'm going to talk to Spy Tech about this at the end of the month. But most general managers, when they look at a salary cap, they figure each position group by percentage. So maybe they say, okay, we want 25% of our cap in quarterback. We want 35% in offensive line, 35% or 20%, whatever. And they have each position group slotted by percentage. So then they say, okay, you know what? We're going to re-sign a Spills and it's going to take our percentage too high. So where are we going to cut it from? Who are we going to let go? Maybe this opens up a position for them to make a trade or go get a potential player where they have to up that percentage but lower this one, but they think they can cover it. Any number of things. Any number of things. But the point is the Raiders continue. They've had some losses. No one's trying to pretend. Do I think they're better right now than they were at the end of the season? I do. Do I think that defense is better now than it was at the beginning of the season before they lost people? No, I do not. But still, they're improving. They're making great decisions. They're not hampering this franchise 3 years down the road. I mean, look at how badly the Cowboys have been handled. I mean, last year they almost did nothing to improve themselves. That hasn't been the Raiders as of late. It's not the way this place has been run. And I think John Spytek, the most important grade you can give, someone was asking me for grades today, is John Spytek gets an A. He is exactly the kid I told you about 20 years ago, where he's running around an NFL franchise as a intern, and they're calling him the whiz kid. He's exactly what everyone thought he was going to be. He's being smart. He's being tactical. They sent a message with Max, and they're moving forward. So it was a good day for the Raiders. Again, no surprise with Diablo. I am very thrilled with the Elandon Robertson pickup from Pittsburgh, the linebacker. And then they get Lonnie Johnson, who's a good depth guy, and they got him affordably. So good day for the Raiders. They're not done, but now is where patience has to kick in. They're going to have to be smart. And they're going to be smart because they got to figure, is this a role guy? What about our percentages on position? They're looking at trades a lot there, and they're actively looking, of course, to the draft. I appreciate all of you. Be back here tomorrow night. And you stay out of trouble. Look forward to talking to you. God bless each of you. Have a wonderful day.